An insider has revealed a shocking Islanders report, as on Elliotte Friedman's last episode of the 32 Thoughts podcast for this summer, he revealed some really interesting information about the New York Islanders, what their plans were this offseason, and what is coming next for the team. We're going to break it all down on this episode of Islanders Digest. Really quickly, before we get into that, I do want to thank all of you who have subscribed to the channel. We've officially hit 1,500 subscribers, and your support has meant so much as we continue to put out Islanders content every single day. This might be the last episode for a little bit that we're talking about the 32 Thoughts podcast, but there will be other Islanders rumors and news that come out, and we'll be sure to cover it this summer. So be sure to subscribe if you want all of that Islanders content. Now let's get right into this last episode of the 32 Thoughts podcast. We're going to be really focusing on this episode. And there were a lot of really interesting things that Elliotte Friedman said about the Islanders. He tried to do a segment on every team, considering it is going to be the last episode in a while. And there was a lot of juicy stuff when it came to the Islanders. And the first thing that really caught my attention is there are seemingly so many teams that did not have the offseason that the Islanders had, in the sense where they're feeling really good about themselves. Most teams in the NHL are coming out of this offseason, coming out of free agency, really disappointed. As a result, it seems like several teams have called the Islanders on JG Pageau, and the best part about the Islanders having a real strong offseason here is now there is absolutely no pressure to move Pageau, but if they decide to move him, it will be easier now than ever. And it sounds like, from what Elliotte Friedman is hearing, the Islanders are not interested at all in moving JG Pageau, which is actually really good. We think about what the Islanders got for Brock Nelson this deadline, and a big part of why is Lou Lamoriello was so adamant that he did not want to move him unless another team made it worth his while. And I think that's going to be a similar situation when it comes to Pageau. No, I don't think the return for Pageau is going to be the same as Nelson, but I think it's going to surprise a lot of people. And it seems very clear that Mathieu Darche intends on holding on to Pageau at least into the trade deadline. This is going to be really interesting as the season goes on. I think this is going to be the biggest trade story going on for the Islanders this summer, unless they simply cannot find a deal with one of their other forwards, especially if it seems like somebody, say, as Anthony Duclair, can't find their way into the lineup. But in terms of players that other teams are highly looking at, Jean-Pierre Pageau is going to be a huge target for the Islanders. And when you think about how many teams are disappointed when it comes to not being able to bring in a center, that is only going to be exacerbated as the season goes on, as there are unfortunately injuries, and more importantly, as teams realize that they have a chance at winning in the playoffs, but they need a center. I think this is going to be a great move for the Islanders, and when they do eventually move Pageau, I think they're going to get a haul, but don't expect that to come this summer. I truly believe Friedman when he says Mathieu Darche is not interested in moving this player at this point. I know a lot of fans want to see Pageau move now, that way Callum Ritchie can have a shot at the third-line center position, and my counter to that is, like, you know what? Let Callum Ritchie try as hard as he can in this training camp. Of course, he can change Darche's mind if he has an absolutely incredible camp and just forces his way onto this team. But if that doesn't happen, then there's nothing wrong with him marinating a little bit in the AHL before he comes up to play for the Islanders. I know a lot of people want to see him right now. I personally do want to see him play sooner than later, but I don't think there's any problem with letting him play in the AHL, especially now that the AHL seems like it's in a much better spot. And when the time does come, I think they're going to get a haul for Pageau. This is a player that Darche likes a lot, but I truly can't see him signing him long-term. And as a result, I do think, even if the Islanders are honestly in a playoff position, I can still see them trading this player for future assets, especially knowing that Callum Ritchie is waiting. But let me know what you think about this in the comments below. The other big thing that was talked about on this podcast is this whole trade with Noah Dobson and what the reality of the situation was. And I think it's clear after listening to this podcast and to some other reporters that the Islanders really wanted Emil Heineman. He was a big part of this deal. At first, we kind of treated him like a throw-in, at least some of the media did, in the sense that they were talking about him as an add-on, and the main focus was the first-round picks. And don't get me wrong, those first-round picks were essential to this trade, but I think that Heineman also played a really big part in it. And we're hearing now that the Columbus Blue Jackets offered Voronkov to the Islanders, and the Islanders actually preferred Montreal's deal in a large part because of Heineman. Now, if you remember, I believe Columbus had the 12th overall, or the they had the 14th overall and the 20th overall pick, while Montreal had the 16th and 17th overall pick. Looking back, it's probably better the Islanders got the 16 and 17 because I don't think they would have had a shot on Atchison if they had gotten the Columbus deal. But I think at the time, the big thing that pushed the Islanders towards this Montreal deal, other than the part that Noah Dobson simply wanted to go to Montreal, is they really liked Heineman. And I think this is going to rub some fans the wrong way, especially considering that Friedman's talking about Heineman is a type of player that the Islanders believe can be the next Matt Martin or Clutterbuck, like that type of energy player. I think this is going to upset some fans, especially considering that Noah Dobson was the piece going the other way. And I'm gonna counter that I actually really like it. I've been a very big fan of this trade from the beginning. I think it was Noah Dobson's time to go, and while I do like Noah Dobson, it just felt like the time. And I think what they got in return was really strong. And a big part of what I think they got in return that I love is Heineman. And we're going to talk about what the Islanders got first, and then Voronkov a little bit, because I know some fans would have preferred Voronkov, but I'm going to make the argument that I think Heineman is the rarer player in this NHL. He put up 18 points last year, which I know is not flash. You got to keep in mind it was his first full season in NHL. I do expect that to get better. And more importantly, he was a guy at times who was struggling to fight for minutes. While I don't see him getting high minutes, at least at the start in the NHL for the Islanders, I do think he's going to get consistent minutes on that fourth line. And sometimes consistency is more important to a player than where they're playing. If you're playing, think about Matt Martin, Cal Clutterbuck, and Casey Ziquez. Yes, they're playing on the fourth line, but they knew who they're playing with every single day, and they got comfortable playing together. And I think that was a big part of that energy they brought to that team. And Heineman now, I think he's going to be a similar type of player where he's going to hit a lot. He's going to forecheck hard. And I do think there are more goals for him on the New York Islanders. I can see him putting up 30 or so points on the fourth line, or even the third line for the Islanders. And I know a lot of fans are going to look at what they could have gotten in this trade, and they're going to be annoyed. Dmitry Voronkov is a very skilled player. Last season, he put up 47 points for the Columbus Blue Jackets, and I understand why so many fans are going to say they would have preferred this player. Personally, I don't agree. I understand the Islanders need scoring, and Voronkov does score. Although I would also argue this Columbus offense was a really unique type of offense where I just don't know if Dmitry Voronkov would have had the same fit on the Islanders. And we know a player like Heineman fits exactly the type of game that Darche wants the Islanders to play, a high-speed, high-checking game. That is what he's looking for. We know Heineman can play that game really well and really help bring back an identity to this Islanders team, which I think they desperately needed. I'm not going to try to focus too much on that identity aspect, but I think that's a really important part of this trade. While a player like Voronkov, I do believe that he could have scored 20 goals for the Islanders, but I don't think there is a huge step up from his production. That's a big part of this too. If I believe this was a player who could potentially score 60, 70 points, and I might be completely wrong next season, and if I am, let me know. But I think Voronkov, considering that he is 24 years old, this 47 points really is his peak in the NHL, or close to what he's going to be. And considering what the Islanders already have, I just feel like this is not really the player they needed. As much as it would have been nice to add 20 goals to this lineup, I honestly think by making other moves, such as bringing in Shabanov, I think the Islanders actually did add 20 goals to their lineup. And players like Heineman, I feel like, especially at his age, are much harder to find in the NHL currently. You look around this league, it's really hard to find hard forecheck because every team wants this player, and especially you look at the contract that Heineman scored for the next two years, $1.1 million. This is going to age gracefully for the Islanders. I believe Voronkov is still unsigned. He can end up being a lot more expensive than people are anticipating. I understand why a lot of Islander fans are going to argue that perhaps the Columbus trade was better. You also got to keep in mind perhaps the draft would have not gone the same way. I personally think that while Voronkov is a good asset, I really understand why Darche went for Heineman instead, and I think as the season plays out, I really believe that Islander fans are going to fall in love with this player. Just reading some of the comments that Montreal fans have left talking about Heineman, this is a fan favorite type and is going to really add more physicality that the Islanders especially need. While I feel like Voronkov is more of a one-dimensional player, which is kind of what I was trying to say before. The words kind of left my mouth, but Heineman is the type of player he's going to be killing penalties for the Islanders, which you know last year was something they really struggled with. He's going to be playing more defense, while Voronkov, while I do believe he would have added more offense to this team, I don't think there would be much more than that, and especially now the Islanders have Shabanov. We'll see how that works out, but I'm not that upset about the Islanders not trading Voronkov, but let me know what you think in the comments below, because you might completely disagree, and I love to have hockey conversations with you guys in the comments. One last note before we end this video, we do have confirmation now that Steven Pellegrini and Chris Lamoriello are remaining with the Islanders, as Stefan Rosner has confirmed. We have pretty much speculated at this point that that was going to be the case. Ryan Bowness is also going to be a part of this management group. He's who Darche added to this club, and I think he's going to have a really big role with this team moving forward. I'm really excited to see what he brings. I know it's upset a lot of people. Chris Lamoriello in particular staying with the Islanders. It's not the end of the world, honestly. I get it. He really has not done the best job from what we know. But if Mathieu Darche thinks he can add something to this group, and as long as he's not over-relying on Chris Lamoriello, again, the Islanders have 3 assistant GMs. I'm sure Darche is likely trusting Bowness the most, considering he hired him. It's not the worst-case scenario for me. I do think Chris Lamoriello, at this point, I don't think he's the best for the role. He's been there for so long. He has to be good at something. Maybe that's me being too positive. We'll see what happens for the future. We know Lou Lamoriello had already signed Pellegrini and Lamoriello to extensions, so it is what it is for the Islanders. I don't mind them having 3 assistant general managers. In fact, I've always been a proponent of having more voices in the room, and Chris Lamoriello's voice might not be the best voice, but at least it's something to go against Mathieu Darche. And as long as Mathieu Darche is in control, I think after what we've seen this offseason, I completely trust him with everything. So if he believes that it's best for Chris Lamoriello and Pellegrini to stay, I'm not going to argue with him. But let me know what you think about that and all these other things we talked about in the comments below. I'm especially curious to know what you think about that Noah Dobson trade return. Now that we know that there's an alternate reality where that could have happened with the Columbus Blue Jackets. As always, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. My name is Patrick Nilan. Catch you on the next episode of Islanders Digest. Let's go Islanders!